song, let's sing Side by Side.
Side by side we stand, awaiting God's command, worshiping the Savior King, living by His grace and moving on in faith. Jesus will see us through. Meet me in heaven, we'll join hands together. Meet me by the Savior's side. I'll meet you in heaven, we'll sing songs together. Brothers and sisters, I'll be there. Soldiers all I'll be to go where Jesus leads. We'll fight with Him and we will overcome. Heaven is our goal to save every soul. Pray that we all will be there. Meet me in heaven, we'll join hands together. Meet me by the Savior's side. I'll meet you in heaven, we'll sing songs together. Brothers and sisters, I'll be there. Praise the Lord, we all will be there.
For our next song, let's sing My Jesus, My Savior.
Happy Sabbath, each one of you. I would like to welcome you all for this AY this evening. We are celebrating the Global Public Campus Ministries this weekend. So we'll be taking the Friday as well as tomorrow. On behalf of the AY team, I would like to welcome each and every one of you, our regular church members, and the visitors that are visiting amongst us. Our opening song will be Give Thanks. Give Thanks. Let's all bow down our heads in prayer. Our gracious, kind, and living Heavenly Father who art in heaven, we'd like to thank you for this opportunity where we would come and sing praises to thy name. We thank you for the church members that have come here. Please continue to bless them and guide them. Please be with the program that is being arranged, Lord. Please be with the participants. Help them to give their best and help us to be blessed, Lord. Help us to keep the Sabbath hours holy. In thy name I pray. Amen.
Tan tên hê na em thu nghe soya bụi tu này lâu chân tu này lâu tên hê na te mà ngày tu này lâu tên hê na em thu nghe soya ni tên anh chào tên lệ cho tung cho chi lâu tên thu nghe sẽ làm thà rong na bê đông tên tan lệ ngày na she lâu tu tan suan em kim mai hi the lâu thon mai lâu không ngày na môi lệ không ngày na tu ôm lệ ba không ngày na ai đâu bụi ôm lâu em ngang hun na po em ngang na la po em ngang hursa bomin
I welcome you all once again this evening for our special AY service. It's a PCM weekend, as you all are aware by now. And we have something special arranged for all of you, just to bring out the theme of PCM, though it takes us back in time. How the people of God were led by His will, even when they were in exile. And so it is today when we are out in the world. How are we to be prepared, and how God leads? God is willing to lead us. And before we get into the main part of our program, I'd like to invite Pastor Jadav to answer a few questions about PCM, because not many of us may be aware of its objectives and the reasons why we have the PCM weekend. So I invite Pastor Jadav to come forward, and he'll clarify a few things for us. Good evening, Pastor. It's a blessing to have you.
Good evening.
By now, you would have seen the involvement of youth in the program that we had today. How happy are you with the involvement?
Oh, I have no words to express, although we are just introducing the department itself. But the involvement of the youth and the professional people, the students, is really great. I'm really pleased and very happy about it.
Yes, even last year we could see such wonderful involvement by the youth. The Global Youth Day, whenever they are involved, they are enthusiastic and they happily come forward. Now, I've got a few questions about PCM. Many of us came to know PCM only because of the PCM weekend last year and this year. What are the objectives of this department?
Yeah, you're right, because last year we had started with the same way, the Global PCM Weekend. And I was not present here, but I want to tell you, one of the divisions, the program what they put, it was really wonderful, because the objective of the department was depicted and what they have done last year. And similar way, this year also we are doing it, but it's a one-time event in a year. It's just like a celebration coming together. But the objectives are great here. As I have spoken a few days ago, while the Impact Week was here, in a similar way, I would like to reiterate again. PCM is a public campus ministries. Now, public campuses, that means the campuses which are not Adventist campuses, public campus. The word itself will give us the understanding. What do we do as a church there? Now, public campus means the Adventist students, whether they are in college, nursing school, hospital, or maybe in the universities. Those are studying outside the Adventist institution. Those campuses we need to target through our students. It is the responsibility of the church to nurture these students, because they are secluded, they are alone, they are in secular world, and same time it's a duty of a pastor at the church or the local congregation to nurture these people. And the objective, the main, is that they represent Seventh-day Adventist Church on those campuses. And that's why we call them, they are the ambassadors of the church on those campuses.
So what are the plans in place to nurture them?
Yes, this is quite a vital question about the plans and nurturing. It's not one-time event, it's not one service, but it needs to go throughout the year. Just like the other departments, what we care about. Same time, we care about the students, bringing them together. Even because every week we meet them. They are part of our church, although they are outside on the public campuses. But when we meet them, their involvement and their spiritual life to be nurtured through the church. That's the main plan we should be having, an ongoing program throughout the year.
So are there some workshops or training programs that are conducted?
Definitely, because to equip them, we are going to have next year. Just yesterday I had the conference with the GC director, and we have already put in the next year program, the calendar we have filled up. Maybe somewhere in the month of September, we are going to have the PCM Congress, where all these professionals will be invited and they will be nurtured. It's going to be a good, massive program for the year, but in between, quarterly, we have plans to meet with the students on union-wide or maybe the section-wide, wherever they represent, or even going to their place and meeting and conducting workshops for them.
Has it already been done? Is it taking place now, or it's
Yes,
a new,
it is
it's,
not
it's an
published
initiative?
probably, and
Okay.
we may not be aware, but that's my full-time job,
Right.
along with my counterparts at the unions and some city churches. We are doing this, and we are meeting them regularly.
Right. Thank you. Do you have some challenges?
Oh yes, it is a challenge because anything new is not really accepted. Because the moment some of us see, those who are not aware, ignorantly, they may say, what is this all about? What is this PCM? That's the first challenge, to make awareness in the church. Although it's not a very long time this department has been established, but the Adventist Chaplaincy Ministry was part, of course, the PCM is a part of Adventist Chaplaincy Ministry, which was established about 31 years ago. And other divisions are quite active and they do take part. But our challenges is first thing to take across the message, make awareness with such groups and the leadership of every level, and we take care of this group. Those is a major challenge that we need to reach out to these people.
Right. I hope all your plans take shape and they yield fruit. And we'd love to see and be involved in these programs in the coming years. And as we've always been, as our church has always been, and as our youth have always been supportive, they will always be supportive even in the future.
Thank you for that assurance. And this is our, as I say, it's a mother church for our division. We are the model church for others. And we launched the program. We are fortunate, we department directors, those who promote such programs in our churches, and the Jivan Jyoti Church takes the lead. And thank you for your leadership for this program. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now it's time to time travel and go back to the Old Testament days. We'd like to meet with a few of our heroes who, with their strengths and weaknesses, have had great influence on this world. And the first pair will be Solomon, King Solomon, and Prime Minister Joseph. I invite both of them. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Please be seated. Joseph, you've been an inspiration. But then when we read through your story, there are some things that we are intrigued about. About your childhood especially? Were your brothers jealous of you? How were you? Were you someone who was proud?
Well, my childhood was just like any other ordinary child's childhood. I had brothers to play with. Of course, I had 11 brothers to play with, which made me the butt of all jokes. But I enjoyed myself. There was no problem. Of course, as time went on, I guess being the youngest, my father decided that he loved me more than anybody else.
And it was quite obvious.
Well, at that time, I didn't realize it as much. And of course, I had a couple of dreams which then changed the whole perspective. And the dreams were not anything spectacular. I mean, they were just ordinary dreams that you would get when you go to bed. But the only thing that stood out from them was I couldn't understand them. And so like any other child, I would go and talk to my brothers about it, and my father eventually, and they didn't like what they felt was the right interpretation.
Yeah, obviously, they would, even we would think, that you were just putting yourself higher than the others.
Yes, I mean that's the basic perception that you would get at. But to me, I was still trying to figure out what this dream meant to me, especially. What would happen in the future. And even my father commented at one point that saying, do you think that we would bow down to you? So it created a sense of doubt in me as to what exactly this was going to happen. And things compounded by the fact that my father bought one of the best robes in the market for me. I would assume that he would have bought 11 more for my brothers, but apparently he bought only one. Which
he had enough money to do that.
He had enough money to do that, and that just aggravated the whole thing.
Right. Before we come back to you, let me start with King Solomon. King, it's our pleasure to have the wisest man on earth to be with us. How was it to be king at 20? More so to carry forward the legacy of your father, who was called the greatest king of Israel.
Legacy of my father. Well, something about my father, King David. He was, of course, a person who was known for his ruling capacity. But if you see, he is a person who only started, and I am the person who took the start to another level. He was the person who initiated, but I made it complete. And of course, at the age of 20, well, I am known as one of the wisest kings for no reason. I was known for ruling the whole kingdom and keeping them in peace and in order. And of course, it was a challenging task to take the role of being a king at a very young age. But as my father was known for his ruling leadership quality, I had to make sure that I follow his legacy as well.
So, what about your legacy? Did you leave behind a legacy?
Well, of course, there's no doubt about my legacy. People keep talking about it over and over again. I have set up a benchmark that I don't think any other king can ever achieve in a course of time.
You believe so?
I know so.
Thank you. Do you think God should have just given you wisdom instead of adding all that wealth?
Well, of course, when I asked for wisdom from God, He saw that my request was very genuine. And adding with my wisdom, He gave me the wealth, He gave me the power, and that's the reason why I could be one of the most powerful ruler in the entire ages of history. And of course, God, He is known as a person who gives more than what we are supposed to get it from. And because of His infinite wisdom and power, He had given me not just wealth, but also wisdom and power to rule over various nations.
Yes, and that was used to go after fame and go after those women. But here was someone who went away from a woman. You went after 1,000. I'll come back to you. And here's someone who ran away from a woman at the sight of evil. How was it for you when, it was probably a vulnerable time because you were doing everything right and everything was going wrong. And you something that you said is still quoted by most people to young people. How can I do this great wickedness in the sight of my God?
Well, the scene between me and Mrs. Potiphar, as you would call it, did not just begin at one random thing. It was building up to that. You see, I went into Captain Potiphar's house as a slave. Now, I started at the lowest rank possible, feeding the chickens, taking the goats out, that type of work, which I had not been doing in my own home. So for me, it was just basic work. But God had blessed me, and through my journey, from the time I was sold to reaching this house, I had spent a few days crying bitterly, because I thought back to that dream that I had where God was going to make me someone famous and someone big, but this was not going in the right direction. And I realized then the lessons that my father taught me, the lessons that he had learned when he had difficult situations and how he trusted God. And so for me, I started learning to depend on him. And small victories became bigger victories. And soon that became part of me. So you see, when it came to that particular situation, the lines were already drawn.
Right. So it was not a decision that was taken on the spot.
It was not a decision taken on the spot. It was there, it was ingrained, it was building up to that moment. And I knew that if I had to go or face any other trial, my only way was to depend on God.
And to flee evil.
And to flee.
At the first sight of it.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it was a predetermined response to situations before they even arise.
Well, chance always favors the prepared mind.
Right. Okay. While Joseph was drawing boundaries, or was keeping himself within the boundaries given by God, King Solomon was breaking those boundaries. And what was happening?
Well, you see, as a powerful king, my job was to make sure that I bring peace to nations that I conquer. And it was customary back in those days that the king with less power would offer his daughter in marriage to the king of more power, and that is me. Now, it so happened that every nation that I went with battle and I won, the girls would just come in line with me. This is something I couldn't stop. Now, of course, having
sweet influences.
Yeah,
Okay.
sweet influences with power and might comes great responsibilities. But the number 700, even I couldn't have a count of how many wives I had. Some of the wives I never meet on daily basis. Some of the wives I've never even seen their face properly. But it was just customary that a nation, once being conquered, they give their daughters in hand, and that was just to maintain peace between different nations. And as we all know that in my ruling, during my reign, it was considered as one of the most peaceful era of the kingdom or of the ruling of any kings.
Yeah, obviously, because that kingdom never existed after that. It was divided. Okay, but tell us what intrigues all of us. How did you handle 1,000 when people are struggling with one?
Well, that's why I'm known as the wisest king of all times. It requires an art and a way to deal with women. And along with my wisdom that I got, I also learned the art of handling my wives. So it was not challenging for me. Of course, I am no ordinary man in this case. And so therefore the exception of me having 700 wives.
And you could please them well. You wrote those songs and those poems. Was it meant for all of them or just a few of them?
Well, you see, again I said it's an art to please your wife. In my case, it's wives. And you keep your wife happy, the man also is happy as well. And again, in my case, happy wives, happy man. So when my wives asked me of certain things like building them a temple or a place for them to go and stay, it was my duty that I thought by building so, there would be peace not just from the outside nations, but within my walls as well, within my empire.
So you just kept them happy so that the entire nation would be happy.
Well, that's the smartest way to deal with problems. Just keep them happy. When it comes to ladies, wives, Just listen to what they ask.
Okay. Men, are you listening? Okay. Prime Minister Joseph. Now, you were in trouble again and again, and still you won't jump off those lines you had drawn. Won't you think that was foolishness to throw away that opportunity that was coming your way? I mean, you were the master there at Potiphar's house.
Well, to me, what was most important was glorifying God, no matter what. That was what was ingrained in me. That was what came out when I faced Mrs. Potiphar. That's what happened even when I was thrown into the jail. All said and done, every obstacle that I faced, even when I became Prime Minister, was not about me. God doesn't give us problems to tell us who we are. He knows us. The problems are for us to know who He is. Every problem we can find a way to find out a new way of finding out God. We look at things, we look at problems, we look at trials, situations where we are the focus. It's not us. It has never been us. The fight is not between us and Him. We are just a pawn in all of this. The fight has always been between Satan and God, God's glory. And if we can remember to glorify Him in all that we do, we are surely going to come on top, no matter what the situation is.
Right. This reminds me of something I'd like to read to the audience. At times, God will appear like an unkind friend, but He's not. He will appear like an unjust judge, but He's not. Keep the thought that the mind of God is behind all things, strong and growing. Therefore, you can rest in the perfect confidence in Him. God does not give us an overcoming life. He gives us life as we overcome.
Exactly.
And the strain of life is what builds our strength. There is no strain, there is no strength. And that's typified in your life.
Yes.
But okay, in the end, when you met with all your brothers, there's that little bit of naughtiness that comes through.
Yes, I wanted to see whether they had changed from their ways. And of course, when they appeared in front of me to place the request for buying grains, I immediately recognized who they were. And I spoke through my interpreter to them, asking them, from where they had come and things like that. And lo and behold, they started speaking amongst themselves in Hebrew. And I understood exactly what they were saying. And I had to keep a very straight face to maintain that. But the joy of seeing my family, whom I had not seen for so many years, I could not hold back. So I had to leave the room for a few minutes, compose myself, come back, and then, again, question them and things like that. It was only when I saw their youngest brother, my youngest brother, Benjamin, that I realized I needed to be sure that they did not have the same feelings they had for me initially towards him. And they did not have that. They proved that. And so when my father came back, it was such a joy to see and meet all of them that, I forgot whatever they had done, whatever they had said. And they too, in turn, had been happy. In fact, my eldest brother, Reuben, did plan to save me, but it never fulfilled. So, things work out for good.
So eventually it was like a fairy tale ending.
Fairy tale ending.
God was moving right
Yes.
through. Yes. One last, not the last one, the second last question to you. All our youth have a question to ask you. You had your ways in everything. You went after your own pleasure. And at the end of it all, you came back and said everything is vanity. right? So our youth have this question, um, can't we all do that? I mean, go have our own way, do everything that pleases us, and then in the end come back and say everything is vanity.
All right, the reason why I said everything is vanity is because I experienced two phases in my life. Now, in the very beginning was the phase where I was connected with God. And the truth to be told is, these were the days that were the most happiest days of my life. Because I felt God's presence and I knew He's leading me in every action that I do. But towards the later years of my life, that's where I slowly started drifting away from God. And of course, as you know, most of my wives, they are from the heathen countries. And since I started to become more famous, more powerful, I started doing things on my own, where I was not listening to God, but I was trying to listen to my own words and something that is in my heart. I was behind fame. I was behind being the most powerful king ever. And that's where I slowly started to drift away from God, where my life was really a miserable phase, to be honestly speaking about. Now, why when I say everything is vanity is because when you know that you're going away from God, you really can experience a change in your life. That is, when God is with you, you feel more confident, you become more powerful, but the moment you go astray from God's words, that's where you start to fall.
But then you realized it too late.
I did take some time to realize, and that's why I have an advice to the youngsters. The sooner you realize, the better it is for you to come closer to God, because as temptation comes one after the other, it slowly sidetracks you away from you getting connected with God.
Yeah, it's like you never know how late is too late.
Exactly, you never know.
Right. And finally, you had to say, remember your Creator in the days of your youth.
Yeah, that is a powerful message again I want to give to the youngsters, because as you grow older, there is a lot of temptation that comes down your way. And when you're firm and strong from the days of the youth with your Creator, there is an easy passage for you to forbid the evil temptations that come by your side. So this is my message to the youngsters.
Right. So here's a powerful lesson from both King Solomon and Prime Minister Joseph. One was exiled, and in adversity, he stayed close to God. And the other was enjoying complete freedom and peace and drifted away from God. So maybe if there is an adversity in your life, it's God who is in control of everything. So given a chance, would you have done anything differently?
Definitely, given a chance, I would just like to relive my days before and not done things which are not pleasing to God, because God clearly told that don't fall in trap to the ladies or the women who are from the heathen countries, because they turn your attention from the living God and they focus your attention to the idols. And that's something that I fell for. I didn't listen to God's words, and there hence I felt the downfall of my ruling towards the kingdom and also towards the people. I felt the difference, and I also regret doing the things which I didn't want to do.
And what's the bottom line of your experiences?
Trust in the Lord, and don't lean on to your own understanding. That would be the best thing to say.
It was a pleasure having both of you, and thank you for the valuable lessons that you've presented to us.
Well, it was a pleasure being here.
And now it is time to call upon two queens, Queen Esther and Queen Jezebel. It's our pleasure having both of you. Queen Jezebel, nothing much of your background is is known. Could you tell us of your childhood and your life as a princess in Tyre, where your father was a king?
As a king, my father was also a priest of Astartes, the Phoenician goddess. And as a princess, I was also a prophetess. And as I was growing up, they taught me how to honor my deities of my native land. And about Tyre, it is called the Queen of the Seas, a city or an island city of splendor. I always marveled at its beauty. And as a princess, I could have all that I wanted and live the way that I choose to live.
Yes, and we do see that throughout your life. And Queen Esther,
Yes.
tell us about your younger days.
I was orphaned very early in my life. I had seen neither of my parents. My uncle Mordecai brought me up like his own daughter. He was a very God fearing man, and I believe he's brought me up in the exact same way. He taught me to honor God and not to honor anyone else above God. About the Jews in my time, I've actually never been to Jerusalem because
Did you want to go?
yeah, I did. It was my homeland. I couldn't go because, I mean, it just didn't happen. And the Jews in my time, we were in exile, but we weren't slaves. So we had the freedom that we needed. Even when the choice was given for us to go back, only about 50,000 went back. The rest of us stayed because we had already established ourselves. We built our homes, vineyards, so we stayed back.
Right. Queen Jezebel, what about your marriage with Ahab? Did you have any fears concerning new territory that you were entering into?
My marriage, it was just a political alliance. The union provided both the countries with military support against their powerful enemies and got them valuable trade routes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Israel gained access to the Phoenician ports, and Phoenicia gained access to Transjordan through Israel's central hill city. And it was like Ahab was a good husband, and
Yeah,
I had some
looks like he
fears.
was an obedient husband.
After all, he built a temple for Baal.
Okay, he better obey.
Yes.
Okay.
And Israel's topography was, and Israel's topography and climate and religion, they were very different from that of mine. And apart from, in contrast to my country is a moist sea coast and mm, the pleasant look of my country, Israel seemed to be a dry desert and an arid land.
Right. And what about you, Queen Esther? How was it to become the queen of the world's most powerful empire?
To be honest, I wasn't actually that excited. But I wasn't trying to escape either because I knew God was leading me. Everywhere I went, things fell in place. I found favor in the eyes of the king, and it is true that God exalts the humble.
Right. And what about your religion there? Did you have freedom to worship at that
Yeah.
time?
Yes, we did. King Darius, the time of Daniel, he issued a decree stating that all the people in his kingdom must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. And so we actually had peace. We could worship freely.
And Queen Jezebel, you were in a foreign land which didn't allow idol worship, but still you brought in your priests with you. You brought in idols, and you built temples. How do you dare do something like that?
I found Israelites to be ethnocentric and xenophobic people.
So-
In-
Powerful statement.
In contrast to my traditions and the familiar gods and goddesses that I knew, Israel was a home to a state religion where they gave priority to a lone and masculine deity. I optimistically believed that I could create a religious tolerance and legitimacy to those who worshipped Baal or the Baalites who worshipped who were already residing there in Israel because their prophets um, yeah because their prophets were against it. I had to take a bold step to destroy those who tried destroying our people.
So,
and
yes.
and in spite, the thing is that the Israelites are so mean because they can tolerate a foreigner for their economic welfare, but they cannot tolerate their religion and their worship services. Why not?
Good question. And they were enjoying their religious freedom in another country, and so you probably expected that in Israel. So it was about cultural pluralism and economic prosperity. That's what you're saying. And what about, we see Ahab coming across as a very meek man.
Ahab didn't
Was
mind
it
much about
meekness
it.
or
No, he was just
weakness?
obedient.
Oh, okay. All right. Queen Esther. We see Ahab in that light. And what about Mordecai? Was he proud? You know, he comes across as a proud man. Why didn't he just listen to the king's decree and bow down to Haman? This way, he wouldn't have put your entire race at risk.
That was easy to say. Mordecai, yes, he was proud. He was proud of his responsibility. He was proud of his people. He was proud of his God. But never was he proud of himself. He was a very humble man as far as I know him. And in fact, he didn't even get the honor he deserved, yet he didn't run after it. I would call that humility. When the king commanded all the people to bow down and to pay and to do obeisance, it was actually a gesture of paying homage to the one God. And people here were reverencing Haman as if he were some sort of a deity. It wasn't pride, I'm sure, because my uncle said he would be willing to even kiss the soles of Haman's feet to save Israel.
Okay.
So it can't be pride, nor was it any love of glory or anything.
So what about Haman?
Haman, yes, it was his haughtiness that put us in trouble, not my uncle's pride.
Not your uncle's pride. Okay. So his haughtiness put an entire race at risk, and here was a haughty queen whose actions actually was about to wipe out an entire nation. Now, coming to one of those things that led to your fall, Naboth. Now, Naboth was fully within his rights to hold on to his property, but taking his property, killing him, accusing him of the things he didn't do. How could you do something like that?
I hailed from Phoenicia, where a monarch's whim is tantamount to law. Being raised in a powerful country like that, where people would even be afraid to ask question against the ruler's decree or his wish, he just refused his sovereign's proposal. How dare he? And he rejected a request. And I don't request, I just command.
Wow. Okay, now here was a queen who acted swiftly, who was proactive, who took control of the situation. But you were never like that. You were I don't know, were you afraid when Mordecai came and told you to act, to do what he asked you to do? You were like quiet for so long. You were so passive.
If I were to speak for myself, I'd say the king didn't call me. He didn't call me. I hadn't been called for over a month now, and I didn't want to go. I just didn't want to go in. So I was waiting for the opportune moment. Also, you must understand that I never took things in my hand. I was just.
That's exactly what I'm saying. You were never proactive.
I gave myself. I made myself available for God to use me, and He did. He moved me, and I moved. So if you're saying I delayed, you're actually saying God delayed.
Okay.
But God's clock
But
never
okay,
delays.
fine.
It doesn't
That's
chase.
that. I agree with that. But what about the second time? You got the opportunity to speak to the king. You called him for the banquet, but at the banquet, the first time you didn't give your request. You called him for a banquet. Okay, fine. Even there, you're calling him for a second banquet. It's like you're trying your best to shirk your responsibility.
To be honest, I was actually getting a feeler just to see how the king is feeling or whatever. But again, as I said, I never took things into my hand. Look at what happened that night and the next morning.
Mere luck.
God's grace.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm saying it was just God leading
You mean what the honor that was given to Mordecai and
Yes, the
Okay.
next morning, what happened the next morning?
the night he couldn't sleep.
Yeah,
And-
and they brought the book for him to
Yeah,
read.
she
and
says it's a
then-
coincidence, but you say it's grace of God.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Right. So no, that's what I mean. You're able to justify everything that you did, but Naboth, I don't think you could. And what made you upset with Elijah?
He was just Israel's troublemaker. Only if he had not bothered us, I would have just left him alone.
No. That's a lie. I can't accept that. Not satisfied with establishing your religion, you tried to wipe out Israel's religion. And not only that, you killed all their prophets, and the prophets were afraid of you. There was this young servant, Obadiah, who hid 100 prophets, and there was only one person who could stand against you and point out your wickedness openly, and that was Elijah. You almost wiped out the religion and destroyed the very purpose of the existence of this race.
Enough.
No,
Enough. I'm leaving.
wait, don't be upset. Just wait a minute. I have just one more question for you. Please be seated. Okay, that makes me a little nervous. Okay. Yeah.
Careful.
Yeah, okay. Now, I'll come back to you. So, what was it like at the end of it all? How was that victory? What did it mean to you?
It was not just any victory, it was a victory of hope. It was God's victory. Ironically, we were supposed to die a day just before Passover, all the Jews. But then a few months later, God worked things out, and then there was another decree stating that we won't be killed. In fact, the day we were supposed to die, we were feasting.
Right. How would you summarize your life and all the actions that you took?
I took all the responsibilities in my hands. I have authority over my subjects, and I used it at the right time, at the right place. I did not give excuses like her for escaping my responsibilities. I was in control, and I know I was in control.
I made myself available, and God used me.
Well, that summarizes it beautifully. Okay, thank you both for joining us. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Not my pleasure.
Okay, now we have two prophets, Prophet Elisha and Prophet Balaam. Thank you for joining us. So let's. Okay, I'd like to start with Prophet Elisha. Um, you know, um, Prophet Elijah was a very powerful man, and you were taking his mantle. And when he called, your response was immediate. And you did something interesting when you were called. Could you explain to us?
That scene was a memorable one. And I was just plowing in the field. He comes past by. He throws his mantle around me. The moment he did that, all I could think of was, I need to go say goodbye to my family and leave. No going back. I slaughtered my oxen and I burnt my plowing instruments to cook the meat. There's no going back. You can't put your hand on the plow and then look back. Such people are not fit for the service of God.
Right. And Balaam, Prophet Balaam, tell us about yourself and your life as a seer.
I lived as a foreigner among the Ammonites and Moabites. In fact,
So you were a foreigner there.
yeah.
Okay, not in, yeah, right. Okay.
In fact, my name itself means